Granny Cornwall's Storytime. The Wind in Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Chapter 3, The Wild Wood, Part 2. Ratty was looking for Mole, who had got lost in the wild wood. Ratty made his way manfully through the length of the wood to its furthest edge. Then, forsaking all paths, he set himself to traverse it, laboriously working over the whole ground, and all the time calling out cheerfully, "Moly, Moly, where are you? It's old Rat!" Rat had patiently hunted through the wood for an hour or more, and at last, to his joy, he heard an answering little cry. Guiding himself by the sound, he made his way through the gathering darkness to the foot of an old beech tree with a hole in it, and from out of the hole came a feeble voice saying, "Ratty, is that really you?" The rat crept into the hollow, and there he found the mole, exhausted and still trembling. "Oh, Ratty," cried, "I've been so frightened, you can't think." "Oh, I quite understand," said the rat soothingly. "You shouldn't really have gone and done it, Mole. I did my best to keep you away from it. We riverbankers, we hardly ever come here by ourselves. If we have to come, we come in couples at least. Then we're generally all right. Besides, there are 100 things one has to know which we understand all about, and you don't as yet. I mean, passwords and signs and sayings which have power and effect, and plants you carry in your pocket, and verses you repeat, and dodges and tricks you practice. All simple enough when you know them, but they've got to be known if you're small, or you'll find yourself in trouble. Of course, if you were badger or otter, it would be quite another matter." "Surely the brave Mr. Toad wouldn't mind coming here by himself, would he?" inquired the mole. "Old Toad," said the rat, laughing heartily. "He wouldn't show his face here alone. Not for a whole hatful of golden guineas, Toad wouldn't." The mole was greatly cheered by the sound of Rat's careless laughter, as well as by the sight of his stick and his gleaming pistols, and he stopped shivering, and he began to feel bolder and more himself again. "Now then," said the rat presently, "we must pull ourselves together and make a start for home, for there's still a little light left. It will never do to spend the night here, you understand. Too cold for one thing." "Dear Ratty," said the poor mole, "I'm dreadfully sorry, but I'm simply dead beat, and that's a solid fact. You must let me rest here a little while longer and get my strength back if I'm to get home at all." "Oh, all right," said the good-natured rat. "Rest away. It's pretty nearly pitch dark now anyway, and there ought to be a bit of a moon later." So the mole got well into the dry leaves, stretched himself out, and presently dropped off into sleep, of a broken and troubled sort, while the rat covered himself up too as best he might for warmth, and lay patiently waiting with his pistol in his paw. When at last the mole woke up much refreshed and in his usual spirits, the rat said, "Now then, I'll just take a look outside and see that everything's quiet, and then we really must get off." He went to the entrance of their retreat and put his head out. Then the mole heard him saying quietly to himself, "Hello, hello, here's a go." "What's up, Ratty?" asked Mole. "Snow is up," replied the rat briefly, "or rather down. It's snowing hard." The mole came and crouched beside him, and looking out saw the wood that had been so dreadful to him in quite a changed aspect. Holes, hollows, pools, pitfalls, and other black menaces to the wayfarer were vanishing fast, and a gleaming carpet of snow was springing up everywhere that looked too delicate to be trodden upon by rough feet. A fine powder filled the air and caressed the cheek with a tingle in its touch, and the black holes of the tree showed up in the light that seemed to come from below. Well, well, it can't be helped, said the rat after pondering. We must make a start and take our chance, I suppose. The worst of it is, I don't know exactly where we are. And now this snow makes everything look so very different. It did indeed. The mole would not have known that it was the same wood. However, they set out bravely and took the line that seemed most promising, holding on to each other and pretending with invincible cheerfulness that they recognised an old friend in every fresh tree that grimly and silently greeted them, or saw openings, gaps or paths with their familiar turn in them, in the monotony of the white space and the black tree trunks that refused to vary. An hour or two later, they had lost all count of time. They pulled up, dispirited, weary and hopelessly at sea, and sat down on a fallen tree trunk to recover their breath and consider what was to be done. They were aching with fatigue and bruised with tumbles. They had fallen into several holes and got wet through. The snow was getting so deep that they could hardly drag their little legs through it, and the trees were thicker and more like each other than ever. There seemed to be no end to this wood, and no beginning, and no difference in it, and worst of all, no way out. We can't sit here very long, said the rat. We shall have to make another push for it and do something or other. The cold is too awful for anything, and the snow will soon be too deep for us to wade through. He peered about him and considered. Look here, he went on. This is what occurs to me. There's a sort of dell down here in front of us, where the ground seems all hilly and humpy and hummocky. We'll make our way down into that and try and find some sort of shelter, a cave or a hole with a dry floor to it and out of the snow and wind, and then we'll have a good rest before we try again, for we're both of us pretty dead beat. Besides, the snow may leave off, or something may turn up. So once more they got to their feet and struggled down into the dell, where they hunted about for a cave or some corner that was dry and a protection from the keen wind and the whirling snow. They were investigating one of the hummocky bits the rat had spoken of, when suddenly the mole tripped up and fell forward on his face with a squeal. "Oh, my leg," he cried, "oh, my poor shin," and he sat up in the snow and nursed his leg in both his front paws. "Poor old mole," said the rat kindly, "you don't seem to be having much luck today, do you? Let's have a look at the leg. Yes," he went on, going down on his knees to look, "you've cut your shin for sure. Wait till I get out my handkerchief and I'll tie it up for you." "I must have tripped over a hidden branch or stump," said the mole miserably. "Oh my, oh my." "It's a very clean cut," said the rat, examining it attentively. "That was never done by a branch or a stump. Looks as if it was done by a sharp edge of something in metal. Funny." He pondered a while and examined the humps and slopes that surrounded them. "Well, never mind what done it," said the mole, forgetting his grammar in his pain. "It hurts just the same, whatever done it." But the rat, after carefully tying up the leg with his handkerchief, had left him and was busy scraping in the snow. He scratched and shovelled and explored, all four legs working busily, and while the mole waited impatiently, remarking at intervals, "Oh, come on, rat." Suddenly the rat cried, "Hooray!" and then "Hooray, hooray, hooray!" and fell to executing a feeble dance in the snow. "What have you found, Ratty?" asked the mole, still nursing his leg. "Come and see," said the delighted rat as he danced on. The mole hobbled up to the spot and had a good look. "Well, at last," he said slowly, "I see it right enough, some sort of thing. Lots of times. Familiar object, I call it. A door scraper. Well, what of it? Why dance around a door scraper?" "But don't you see what it means?" "You dull-witted animal," cried the rat impatiently. "Of course I see what it means," replied the mole. "It simply means that some very careless and forgetful person has left his door scraper lying about in the middle of the wildwood, just where it is sure to trip everybody up. Very thoughtless of him, I call it. When I get home, I shall go and complain about it to somebody or other. See if I don't." Oh dear, cried the rat in despair at his silliness. "Here, stop arguing and come and scrape." And he set to work again and made the snow fly in all directions around him. After some further toil, his efforts were rewarded, and a very shabby doormat lay exposed to view. "There, what did I tell you?" exclaimed the rat in great triumph. "Absolutely nothing whatever," replied the mole with perfect truthfulness. "Well now," he went on, "you seem to have found another piece of domestic litter done for and thrown away, and I suppose you're perfectly happy. Better go ahead and dance around that if you've got to, and get it over, and then perhaps we can go on and not waste any more time over rubbish heaps. Can we eat a doormat? Can we sleep under a doormat, or sit on a doormat and sledge home over the snow on it, you exasperating rodent?" "Do you mean to say," cried the excited rat, "that this doormat doesn't tell you anything?" "Really, rat," said the mole quite pettishly, "I think we've had enough of this folly. Who ever heard of a doormat telling anyone anything? They simply don't do it. They're not that sort of thing. Doormats know their place." "Now, you look here, you thick-headed beast," replied the rat, really angry. "This must stop. Not another word, but scrape, scrape, scratch and dig and hunt around, especially on the sides of the hummocks, if you want to sleep dry and warm tonight, for this is our last chance." The rat attacked a snowbank beside them with ardour, probing his cudgel everywhere and then digging with fury, and the mole scraped busily too, more to oblige the rat than for any other reason, for his opinion was that his friend was getting light-headed. Some 10 minutes' hard work, and the point of the rat's cudgel struck something that sounded hollow. He worked till he'd get a paw through and feel, then called the mole to come and help him. Hard at it went the two animals, till at last the result of their labour stood full in view of the astonished and incredulous mole. In the side of what seemed to be a snowbank stood a solid-looking little door, painted dark green. An iron bell hung by the side, and below it, on a small brass plate, neatly engraved in square capital letters, they could read by the aid of moonlight, "Mr. Badger." The mole fell backwards on the snow with sheer surprise and delight. "Rat," he cried in penitence, "you are a wonder, a real wonder, that's what you are. I see it all now. You argued it out step by step in that wise head of yours from the very moment that I fell and cut my shin, and you looked at the cut, and at once your majestic mind said to itself, 'Door scraper.' And then you turned to and found the very door scraper that done it. Did you stop there? No. Some people would have been quite satisfied, but not you. Your intellect went on working. 'Let me only just find a doormat,' says you to yourself, 'and my theory is proved.' And of course you found your doormat. You're so clever. I believe you could find anything you liked. 'Now,' says you, 'that door exists as plain as if I saw it. There's nothing else remains to be done but to find it.' Well, I read about that sort of thing in books, but I've never come across it before in real life. You ought to go where you'll be properly appreciated. You're simply wasted here among us fellows. If only I had your head, Ratty." "But as you haven't," interrupted the rat rather unkindly, "I suppose you're going to sit in the snow all night and talk. Get up at once and hang on to that bell pull you see there, and ring hard as you can while I hammer." Well, the rat attacked the door with his stick, and the mole sprang up the bell pull, clutched it and swung there, both feet well off the ground, and from quite a long way off they could hear faintly a deep-toned bell respond. The end of part 2.